Welcome to the Coven Chat.
Thank you for joining me here at the Maiden Circle Coven Chat podcast, where we talk all things witchy, spiritual, and human.
Hello, merry meet, and welcome. Thank you again for joining me here on the Coven Chat podcast. In today's episode, we are talking all about the Book of Shadows, more specifically, what's in my Book of Shadows, and anything else that comes up, as per usual. I'd, of course, like to start this episode with a reading. I won't be doing a poem this time. I will be reading an excerpt from Llewellyn's World of Magic series. The version I have comes from DJ Conway's Celtic Magic, and I will link that book in the description. I've had this book since I was a teenager. This piece that I am reading is one of a handful of tenets and pieces that I need to read whenever I open my Book of Shadows. I've mentioned before that I have a ritual. The first time I open my Book of Shadows in a 24-hour period, I have to read these pieces. There are 8 pieces in total, and I've read a couple to you in the past. I believe I've read I Am I have read the Witch's Creed, I have read the Wiccan Rede. There are a few more, but when I'm reading from my Book of Shadows, this is the last one on that list. So it's the one I typically end with, and because of that, it's the one that tends to leave the most lasting resonance for me. As I've said, this isn't a poem, but it's still a beautifully written piece. I think it well encompasses my approach to magic, witchcraft, and spirituality. If you don't know, I grew up very science focused. I wanted to go to medical school. I studied biochemistry at UIC. I loved hanging out in hospitals. I was a big science nerd. As I was growing into my spirituality, I was still on that science path. And so it never made sense to me that people treated spiritual beliefs as something so directly separate from science. Everything I was learning about the scientific world was backing up my spiritual beliefs. I think a lot of people like to reference Einstein, who said something about how everything is made up of vibrations. Some of our brightest scientific minds were very spiritual people, because the scientific world and the spiritual world are way more aligned than angry people on Twitter would have you believe. So that said, here is a piece on science and magic from Llewellyn's World Magic series, from within DJ Conway's Celtic Magic. At the core of every religion, at the foundation of every culture, there is magic. Magic sees the world as alive, as the home which humanity shares with beings and powers, both visible and invisible, with whom we can interface to either our advantage or disadvantage, depending upon our awareness and intention. Religious worship and communion is one kind of magic, and just as there are many religions in the world, so are there many magical systems. Religion and magic are ways of seeing and relating to the creative powers, the living energies, the all-pervading spirit, the underlying intelligence that is the universe within which we and all else exist. Neither religion nor magic conflict with science. All share the same goals and the same limitations, always seeking truth, forever haunted by human limitations in perceiving that truth. Magic is technology based upon experience and extrasensory insight, providing its practitioners with methods of greater influence and control over the world of the invisible before it impinges on the world of the visible. The study of the world of magic not only enhances your understanding of the world in which you live, and hence your ability to live better, but brings you into touch with the inner essence of your long evolutionary heritage, and most particularly, the archetypal images and forces most alive in your whole consciousness. So I realize that's a lot. I do hope you can go back and listen to that a few times to really grasp it, or just get the book. I'm not sure if the more modern reprintings still have this introduction, but if they do, you can just get DJ Conway's Celtic Magic, which I'll link in the show notes. And I'm sure you can find it in any older printings of any book from the Llewellyn's World Magic series. So with that, let's move on to this episode's fun fact.
Pagan fun fact. Here's your fun facts now.
When I decided on this episode's topic, I knew very quickly what our fun fact should be, since we're talking about a magical book, essentially, a book that is meant to hold all of a witch's magical understanding, her journey, her experience. I thought, what other books could fit into that category? And then I thought, what if it's not necessarily a physical book? What if it's a record? That is the Akashic records. The Akashic records are said to exist in the realm of Akasha, which is a word meaning air or ether. So they exist within the ether, within the spiritual realm, within the mental realm. If that word sounds familiar to you, it was the name of the queen of all vampires, played by Aaliyah in Queen of the Damned, and originally mentioned in Anne Rice's novel of the same name. And I can't help but wonder if she discovered something about the Akashic records, if she learned about them, and that's how she got the name. In any case, the Akashic records are said to be infinite. They are essentially records of everything that ever has been, will be, and currently is. Anything that is living has a record in the Akashic records, according to some sources. That includes animals, micro creatures, things we have not discovered yet. Every blade of grass, the record, hold it all. Every thought we've had, every word we've said, every experience, it's all in there. The reading that I just did, not only is the reading in the records, but the moment it was written is in the records. My reading it is in the records. The next time I'm going to read it is in the records. According to edwardcase.org, the records has often been called God's Book of Remembrance because it holds the memory and knowledge of all that has ever been. The even more exciting thing is that anyone can access the Akashic record. It is a free library, essentially. All it takes is a little training, a little understanding of what the records are, some clarity and grounding, knowing what you're going for. But anyone and everyone is able to access these records because these records are meant for us to access, specifically our own records. But we can also access the records of anyone else. According to Linda Ho, author of How to Read the Akashic Records, all you need is a person's full legal name to access their records. And if you're able to really tap in, you will know everything you need to know about another person through this access. Of course, note that I said need to know. So this doesn't mean you'll know everything about a person, just everything you need to know in that time. Say, for instance, you meet someone and you want to know if they are safe or dangerous for you. The records might show you that they are comforting and safe for the moment, but they may also show you that this person has trust issues of their own, and maybe they don't see you as safe, and that's something you need to know to navigate that relationship. But they're not going to tell you why those trust issues exist unless that's something you need to know. They're not going to tell you what makes this person so caring and loving and comforting, unless that's something you need to know at that time. Tapping into the Akashic records can help us understand ourselves better, understand our current journey, and navigate the world better. It can help us make better choices. It isn't going to tell us what to do, but it can tell us what a certain choice might lead to. Of course, we do have free will, so we can change our minds. The future is 50-50. You could say that I am tapping into the Akashic records whenever I do a tarot reading. And even that, the future is never guaranteed. In fact, I usually read about the now, what you need to do now to get towards whatever it is you're trying to move towards, as opposed to what is going to happen. The Akashic records are infinite, and as such, they are endlessly fascinating. I absolutely recommend you checking out Linda Howe's book and diving into your own story. There's nothing to fear. The Akashic records won't harm you. There is only benefit. It is either nothing happens or everything good happens. So get into it, and we're going to get into this episode's musing. So, what is a Book of Shadows? In Wicca and other religious witchcraft practices, a Book of Shadows is essentially a collection of everything we've experienced on our journey. For most individual witches or practitioners, It is a private and personal journal that follows their path, usually from beginning to end, the first spells they learn, experiences from meditations, from rituals, anything we learn about herbs or stones. My very own Book of Shadows, as I've mentioned, has those tenets. So what I actually have, those 8 tenets are from years and years of being on this path, but a lot of them I found early on. Specifically, the Wiccan Reed, that was one of the first things I ever found when it comes to witchcraft. There was a version of the Charge of the Goddess that I've mentioned in another episode, but the Charge of the Goddess that I have in my Book of Shadows is by Doreen Valiente and is significantly different. My Book of Shadows opens with I Am I, which I've read to you before. That's something I wrote. Then we have the Witch's Creed, something called the Avocation of the Witch, the aforementioned Charge of the Goddess, the Wiccan Reed, a set of beliefs called the Ordains or the Witch's Laws, and the 13 Goals of a Witch by Scott Cunningham, ending, of course, with that excerpt from Llewellyn. The very next thing in my Book of Shadows is actually just an instruction page on the importance of grounding and centering, because for me, that is how I started all of my meditations. That's how I started all of my rituals. I shouldn't say started as if it's past tense. That is how I start all of my meditations, all my rituals, all of my readings. It's how I start before I do one of these episodes. I have to ground myself. I have to get centered. Grounding and centering can take place in a lot of different forms. Of course, find what works for you. What works for me is typically visualization, so that's what this instruction sheet explains. After that, I have my basic ritual structure. Because Maiden Circle is a teaching coven, so I do have a few lessons online, and I have a group on Facebook that I like to share things with. So I came up with a ritual structure that is easy to teach and easy to follow. I've also used it in in-person rituals when I've hosted those. After that are the Maiden Circle welcoming rituals and initiation ritual, followed by all the rituals I've hosted and done with people, either online or in person. Then I have pages with chants and prayers, with a song that I wrote called Thank Goddess Daily that I may share with you in the future. I've got tarot spreads, some names of some deities, especially Celtic deities, because when I started my journey, I was really big into the Celtic thing, hence Celtic Magic from DJ Conway. I was very interested in learning about my personal Irish heritage for a long time. So I have a list of Celtic deities. I've got a sheet on runes and other witchy pagan symbols. I've got pages on herbs, incenses, stones that I've actually owned and what their meanings are. Spiritual animals. I've even got some Latin translations. When I do small Latin charms, I may use some of these. One of my favorites is Amor Venicito, which means love come quickly, and Amor te teneo, which means love it knows. I've got pages on the moon, and I've also got a bunch of old spells that I wrote years ago or that I found online years ago. And then at the very back, I have my contract for being Maiden Circle High Priestess, my pledge of confidentiality, so that anyone who comes to me and seeks assistance in any way can trust that I'm not going to be using their knowledge or their story as marketing or anything like that. I'm not going to be putting it out. Everything we share is private, which is important for readings. And then at the very, very back, I have my own chart, like my astrolabe birth chart, and a syllabus for the Maiden Circle Coven Path complete version. So there isn't a lot in my Book of Shadows, and because of how I operate, it isn't extremely private. As I said earlier, many solitary witches would not share what's in their Book of Shadows. Even what I gave is still a very surface level look of what's in my book, but I also don't mind if I've opened it that day. I don't mind someone else peeking through it if there's someone I trust. However, and I don't remember exactly where I learned this, it is said that witches of olden days, witches of the past, or women who were into natural healing, holistic healing, who created their own medicines, who did work magic and work spells, they would keep their books hidden and private, and also wrote those books in code because people were hunting witches. People were always looking for a reason to accuse someone of being a witch. And even if they were simply sending correspondence to their best friend about how mugwort can help bring on a period, they wrote it in code because even something as mundane as that could have been seen as witchcraft at that time. So books of shadows were kept in secrecy. They were hidden, they were written in code, and if necessary, they were destroyed so that inquisitors could not get their hands on them. And this was done to protect anyone else, because if other names are mentioned, if they're working with other women or spiritual people in the community and their names are written in the book, and then someone who's hunting witches comes along, finds the book, finds all these names, cracks your code somehow, it's not just your life in danger. So those who had books of shadows would take every precaution to make sure those books could not be in the hands of those who wished to harm them and their fellow practitioners. And if they did somehow fall into those hands, they weren't just easy to read. That is, of course, different nowadays because people are a lot more open-minded. Of course, there are people in many places in the world who still would harm us for these beliefs. Of course, do what feels safe for you. I would recommend, especially if you live in one of those places, that you do keep your Book of Shadows secret. Nowadays, we'll see Books of Shadows that are decked out and decorated and, made to look like the Book of Shadows in Charmed or Hocus Pocus, or covered in glitter, and it has the big BOS or Book of Shadows across the cover. And if you're in a safe place where you can do that, by all means, indulge in that aesthetic. But if you're not, a simple notebook works perfectly. A simple binder from school works perfectly with nothing on it. Do what you need to do to protect yourself. But the Book of Shadows ultimately is your own private thing. It's your own journey, your own experience. If you take the Maiden Circle Coven Path course, you are instructed to start a journal, which would eventually, by the end, be your Book of Shadows. So every lesson, there is a whole lot of things to be added to the journal. And by the end of it, you're expected to have a year's worth of magical, spiritual information that you can always go back to whenever you need it. Because I don't always remember what a certain herb is or what it's supposed to do when I'm trying to mix up an incense. So I can go into my book. Every month or every few months, I pull 4 runes out of a bag. And I don't always remember what the runes mean. I can go to my book. If I am feeling that I need grounding and meditating and breath work aren't really doing it for me, I go to my book and I read those tenets. They always leave me grounded. Those pages. My Book of Shadows is a ever-growing, ever-changing tool. Of course, it isn't my only tool. I also have what I call my computer Book of Shadows or my digital Book of Shadows, where I have 10, 20, 50 times more information on my computer in a folder. That is my digital Book of Shadows. I could print all of it out and put it in my book, and someday I very well might. I have so many resources available. And again, if you are in a place where you can't be out in the open about your beliefs, a digital Book of Shadows is a wonderful way to do it, because then there is nothing for someone to find. You can name it whatever, you can lock it with a password, you can hide it, and someone would have to be trying really, really hard to get into your private information. It's an extremely safe option where your number one risk is the machine crashing and accidentally deleting or losing the data. The second risk is someone hacking into it, but that doesn't actually happen as much as 90s movies would have made us believe. Some people call their Book of Shadows the grimoire, and others separate the idea of a grimoire from a Book of Shadows in that a grimoire is a book of spells, and according to the people who separate it, it's only spells, whereas the Book of Shadows can have everything else that I've mentioned, along with spells and recipes and journal entries, etc. But of course, whatever you choose to call it, you can call it a Book of Shadows, you can call it a grimoire, you can call it a journal, you can call it just my book of stuff. Whatever you want to call it, it is such a valuable tool to have in your spiritual toolbox. We don't exist in a vacuum. All the knowledge in the world is not only through us. Even if you directly access the Akashic record, you're still accessing knowledge that comes from everyone else. We're all connected. The Book of Shadows is a wonderful way of preserving that knowledge, of organizing that knowledge, and of having knowledge to pass down to your descendants, to your coven mates, to your friends, to anyone you care about. It is such a valuable tool. I cannot stress that enough. I hope if you don't already have a Book of Shadows that you start your book today. Start your journal today. If you don't know where to start on this path, especially if you're practicing Wicca or just getting into Wicca, I will of course recommend that you check out the Coven Path course on Udemy. I will link the main page of the course where you can find them all in the show notes, and you can start with Intro to Wicca, and that will allow you to start your journal or your Book of Shadows. And I would recommend that you take your time with these lessons. Don't rush through them, because you're not going to get what you need to get out of it if you do that. You do need to take it step by step, day by day, and really explore this practice and explore yourself, explore your spirit. Take the time to meditate on the things that you're being asked to meditate on, to read, research, write things out. This journey is for you. Rushing through it just to be done is only going to harm you. So I would recommend you do that, take your time, and by the end of it, you will have started what I believe is a very comprehensive and useful, endlessly valuable Book of Shadows. And if you've already started your Book of Shadows, feel free to write me and let me know whatever you want to let me know about it. Whether you have it all dressed up and pretty, whether you use just a notebook, how do you approach the Book of Shadows? How do you approach documenting your journey? So that's all I have to say about the Book of Shadows. Thank you so much for listening to me. Let's move on to this episode's reading. So today's reading, we are using the Gilded Tarot and only the Gilded Tarot. What is our message for the following 2 weeks? So as I was shuffling, the Eight of Pentacles fell out, and then I pulled the King of Wands, the Four of Cups, and the Six of Wands, and on the bottom of the deck is the Queen of Wands. So already here we have sort of a balanced pair, especially if we look at what was pulled first as opposed to what jumped out. The King of Wands was pulled first, and then at the bottom of the deck is the Queen of Wands. So we have sort of bookends, and in between there is the Four of Cups, the Six of Wands. I'm getting that someone has spent some time learning about a situation, specifically learning about another person, perhaps a counterpart, someone they have a crush on, someone they want to work with, someone they want to invest in. They've been spending time learning. This King of Wands has decided that they are no longer interested in daydreaming, and they are ready to make their feelings known. They are ready to speak up and approach this Queen of Wands or bring these energies together. It could be two people, it could be a person pursuing a passion. Take what resonates. But whatever it is, there's no more fantasizing, no more studying, no more waiting. That is now something that has been done. That is, they took the time to learn how to approach whatever it is they're trying to approach, whatever it is that this Queen of Wands is. It could again be a person. It could also just be a passionate endeavor that they have been a bit hesitant about, and they are now ready to actually go for it. They've been focusing on this preparation for a long time. They've been studying for a long time, and now they're ready to not only go for it, but to be very open about it, to let people know that they're going for it. They don't want this to be hidden. They don't want this to be secret. They don't want this to exist only in the realm of their mind anymore. They want this to be action. They want this to happen, and they are ready to make it happen. So I asked if there was anything else we needed to know, and we got the Hierophant, the Ace of Swords, and on the bottom of the deck, the Three of Swords. So someone does want to communicate something, but they are very afraid that it won't be accepted, it won't be believed, and that they won't be trusted. That might be why they spend so much time studying and preparing and daydreaming. So I then asked what actions will be taken, and we have Judgment, Seven of Cups, and Seven of Wands on the bottom of the deck. This tells us that action will be taken. They're going to push through the confusion, push through the worry, and they are going to really stand on this choice. When the choice is made with that Seven of Wands, they will be defending this choice. And it will be something, again, that's not private, that they're not keeping quiet. So it could be something like announcing they want to have a child, announcing they're going to start a business, announcing that they love you, or you announcing that you love them, and then having to stand on that choice, even if there are frightening things. Even if they reject you, then you still have to say, okay, well, my feelings for you remain the same. You can't get bitter. Or you want to start a business and everyone around you is like, no, it's gonna fail. You have to say, well, I believe in myself. I believe in my business. I'm going to do it. I'm cutting through all the confusion, and I've made a choice, and I'm going to follow this choice. Again, take what resonates. This could be about you. This could be about someone around you. Chances are it's about you or someone who is directly connected to you, and you know who they are and you know how they feel already, because otherwise you're not going to get a message that isn't for you. And if it doesn't resonate, then it's not for you. But essentially what we have is someone has been sitting on their laurels for a while, preparing to say something, daydreaming, wishing, praying for action to happen, and they've decided that despite the fear that they feel about this, and they do seem to feel some fear about it, they are going to take that action. They are going to move forward, even if they're risking heartbreak. They think it it is worth it to communicate. It is worth it to be clear, and it is worth it to pursue this thing. And they're going to pursue it openly and loudly and proudly. And it is not like no one's going to be able to knock them off that horse, and no one should be able to, because this seems like it is the right path. If it wasn't the right path, you wouldn't be receiving this path. So take that choice, defend yourself, defend your choice, but know that with judgment, you are being called to do this, that you are not only feeling that you need to be on this path, but those who want the best for you, your spiritual guides, God and Goddess, your angels, they are all calling you to do this. And that's wonderful. So that's your message for this week. Again, thank you so much for joining me on the Coven Chat. Thank you so much for listening, for supporting, for any kind words you have to send in, for sharing any of your stories. You are so, so appreciated. You are eternally in my heart. You are my spiritual family. I am blessed to be connected with you. So thank you. I will see you in 2 weeks, or you'll hear from me in 2 weeks. Until then, I send you 1,000,000,001 blessings and all the love in this universe and the next. Bye now.